Hi, I'm Chris Grimm, founder, coach, principal consultant of RA Consulting. For 24 years, we've been serving leaders and their teams around the world. This podcast, which I wanted to call The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, but is called And Then I, is nothing scripted, nothing fancy. I promise that we'll be talking about successes and failures. It's the gold, I call it, that you find only in real stories with real leaders in real time. With that, I invite you to sit back, soak up the wisdom here of these everyday superheroes. Enjoy. Hi, everybody. It's Chris Grimm, and it's And Then I, where I get to interview superhumans, and they get to tell you stories about things that they've done, things that they're doing, and it's all gold. So I'm not going to waste any more time today. I am with my friend, who's also been my client numerous times. We have a lot of adventures together, so I know this is going to be a rich, probably almost an hour. So get pen and paper, because this is definitely one of those golden nuggets times. And I'm going to let Dustin introduce himself because I probably won't do it justice. I just want to say to everyone, he is literally living the dream. I keep saying that to him. I know you think it's funny, Dustin, but so go ahead and tell everybody who you are. I can't wait to see how you describe yourself. And if you miss something, I'll say it.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris, for having me. And that was too kind of an introduction. I am not a superhuman, but I'm happy to be here. And like you said, I've known you for quite a while. But it's really hard to kind of define my career because I've had many different types of careers. But most recently, I was an executive at a company called Covetris, where I ran various different internal corporate functions, which has been the latter half of my career doing that. But that's really, most recently what I've been up to. But as you alluded to, I am living the dream. I'm calling from Paris, where I now live. And I've been here about 7 months and really, really enjoyed it. But I'm sure we will talk about that.
Yeah, oh, there's so much to talk about. By the way, that was just the most humble. I'm not surprised, by the way, everybody. A few months ago, I think it was 5 or 6 months ago, Dustin sent me a draft bio of himself, and it was literally like the most humble document I had ever seen. I'm like, I think we might need to rewrite this. Entertainment law, which has amazing stories to it, and then corporate level. By the way, you were just so humble. Oh, I used to run a few functions. Let's dig into that so that
okay. Okay. So let me try to summarize. It's funny because I was thinking about this the other day about how to talk about careers, right? And you through your teachings I've seen you do it several times at different companies, talk about the evolution of companies, right? So there is, for those who don't know, there is a really, really good there's really good material about the life of companies and the pattern they follow. So literally as if it's an organism, right? So you talk about like the founding of a company and how it's quick and it's fast paced and people love it at the time when they're, up to 20 people and you're making decisions really fast. And then as you mature and have to scale, the bureaucracy comes into place. And so you know it really well because you've talked about it multiple times. I actually think that careers are a little bit like that as well, like in terms of a complex structure that kind of goes through. And so maybe if I talk about my career, a little bit about myself first, about how that happened, because I think it's evolved, right? And so in my 20s, essentially, I was a lawyer. So I practiced law at an entertainment law firm, a big law firm in Los Angeles, in Century City. And I think about like in that decade was the very early part of my career. And the teachings I had from that were really how to work really hard and how to put your life into work, right? Because it was high pressure, high pain, but exhilarating, adrenaline filled, but just like stressful, like really hard work. Taught me how to intellectually be disciplined, how to write really well, and then how to, and this is also generational. It was just a different time too. This was in the 90s. And it was just in how you function, how you grow in that. And also was also, I think with everyone at the beginning of their career in their 20s, I was also naive too. I was just focused on working really hard and advancing, and I wasn't thinking about family. I wasn't thinking about getting married. I wasn't thinking about any of that stuff. It was all about me, all about my career. And that was what I was laser focused on. So that the first part of my career was at a big law firm practicing entertainment law. I loved it, had a great time. I eventually transitioned.
Before you transition, I need to just point something to people. You were a litigator. You weren't just
Yes.
like writing contracts. No offense to contract writers, but that's extra. Like, you just painted the hard work picture, but I always think about the stress of a litigator, because you have to perform, right? Like, you have to argue, you have to, so I have to imagine that is extra. I don't know. In my mind, it is.
No, absolutely. You're right. And that's a little bit of the crucible of the stress, right? So being a litigator, you're constantly being exposed, meaning that you have to argue in front of a lot of people. You have someone else arguing against you constantly. So you have to make sure, I mean, like, I still have a lot of lawyer friends. The whole time I was litigating, I think most lawyers are like this, I was always afraid that someone was going to make me look stupid. And so I was always prepared. I was always like ready. And so you have that constant, like I always said, like I was fighting against opposing counsel. I was fighting with judges. I was fighting with clients. And as a litigator, that's all, you're just charged. It's all you're doing. And a lot of times that was considered, you're a good litigator. If you're basically a gladiator, you're going in there to fight. And so that, that's ultimately why I decided not to, by the way, if going into the next chapter, by the way, but that was the life. And it was, look, the law firm I was at, a lot of people don't like the law firms. I loved it. I loved the people I was with. I love the people I was practicing with. I liked the adrenaline at first. I grew up playing sports, so I liked the competitive nature of it. But I tell the story over and over again, but I remember waking up. So I had done a deposition representing a very, very famous musician, and I had made the plaintiff.
Everybody on the planet knows, who's no longer with us, but everybody knows.
Correct. I had made the plaintiff cry in a deposition, and I had asked her some very personal questions because it was related to the case, and she cried. And the opposing counsel wanted to break off the deposition. I did not want to break it off. Anyway, we got into typical argument and they walked out. And the client, not the actual client themselves, but the business manager of the client, turned to me and said, "That's fucking awesome. That was great what you just did." And I went home that night and I woke up the next morning and I said to my girlfriend, my then girlfriend, who's now my wife, I don't think I want to do this anymore. Like I am becoming an asshole. And I'm afraid that I'm becoming good at it. And it's not like my natural personality. I'm not like that. That's not what I went to law school for. Not that there was anything wrong with it. It's not like the plaintiff was a white knight or anything, but it's just not what I wanted to be fulfilled by. So within literally a month, I left the law firm. And I remember people telling me, "Are you crazy? You were like," I was like a year away from partnership. And I just did not want to go down that path. And partly it's because I looked down to at the end of the hall, the corner office, and there are a few older partners. They've been through several divorces. Some of them were alcoholics. And I'm like, I do not want to live this life because I could see the stress consuming me. And there was a point, like, I know I'm just one way talking right now, but there was a point literally where I was sitting in my office and my peripheral vision went away, everything got really dark, and it was like down a tunnel. And I laid down on the floor and turned the lights off, and the lead partner in the case came in and opened the door and goes, "Are you okay?" And I said, I don't know what's going on. I'm like stressed, right? It's like I can't see, I lost my vision. And he was great because he's like, "Listen, in 20 years, no one's going to remember this case. No one's going to remember anything about it. You need to like lighten up a little bit." But it was things like that led me out of it. That I decided like, this is not what I want to do the rest of my life. And it wasn't like if you were to ask lawyers, would you want this job at a top law firm representing all these clients? It'd be yes. It's an awesome like opportunity.
I just have to say, not just to you, but for everybody listening and watching, I think you told me a version of that story during the first time we probably had lunch or something, not in our first meeting, and we started working together. But I remember sitting there and thinking, what? Because you're so not that person.
Yeah.
It was really hard to believe that had been you at one time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And, look, law school also trains you, right? Like, so that's all what law school is representing your client's interests. And you're right, that's so far from my natural personality. But that is, the job I was paid to do when I was a litigator. And that's what you're kind of paid to do. Now, I'm sure there's, look, that was, if you think about it, I was like a 6-year lawyer when I left. There's a lot of really experienced litigators that probably say, well, that's BS. You don't have to be that way, right? And I'm sure that's the case. I just didn't wait around to soften the edges, right?
Yeah,
I just,
it
wasn't.
You could do a whole training program on just what you've learned now in retrospect about all of that, because I feel like COVID gave people a lot of time to reflect. And so I know I've shared this with you, but I share it with a lot of people. Since the pandemic, I have more executives, even down in leaders, it doesn't even have to be at the C level, who now have had time enough to see themselves, who they had become, who they are, everything you described. Like, what does it actually take for me to be good at this job? Like, do I want to do what it's taking, which for a lot of people is leaning into a lot of behaviors that are like really stressful on your body to sustain it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's very true. And it just felt incongruous with who I was as a person. So for me, I felt like litigation, you work on a small team of like 2 to 3 other lawyers, but you're not working on big teams. And so it's not a real team effort. I mean, your job is to tear things apart, right? And in a sense, you're not there to put things together and make everyone feel good. So that's eventually why I switched. I went in-house, and then I went into HR, which is probably why at the time. So in my 30s, I was mostly in HR, but why at the time, like why I answered that question all the time, because the most common question I got back then was, why would you leave law to go into HR? Like, why would you do that? Like, because you gave up so much to do this. And you do have to take a step back, right? Because I went through law school and was at a law firm, and then go into HR, people perceive that as a step back. I actually never did. I was never afraid of that stigma of going into HR versus being a lawyer, because I just was never into. The reason I went into law that was not because of the prestige of it. It was literally because I wanted to help other people. And I felt like that the path that opened up for me in HR was one that would allow me to do that better.
Yeah. Well, and it made you to me, it made your story as an HR leader a unique story, because there's a lot of HR people who end up having to pay lawyers, employment lawyers, et cetera, all the time, right? To make decisions, because the workplace is tricky.
Yeah,
it
gave me a great background, right? Like to be able to be in HR and know all because I was an employment lawyer too. So to know all the employment laws was excellent, right? Now, I've said this to other CEOs, I would never hire a lawyer into an HR position, knowing what I know now, right? Thank God they did. They took a chance on me, and I screwed a lot of things up, because you're trained like as a lawyer to defend the company. And so I didn't naturally just like all of a sudden say, oh, okay, now I'm HR, and so I balance all things. I was all about defending the company, right? Like, because that was my training as a lawyer. That is not what you want in an HR executive, right? Like that's not a great background for that. And so I had to learn the hard way that, and I made a lot of mistakes in doing that. But in my 30s was like, again, to go back to that analogy of the life of the company, it was more about mastering, right? So mastering the skill of being an HR executive was much, much different. And I went into it with way too much hubris, thinking like, well, I know employment law, like this is going to be easy. And And really in HR, like 10% of your job is really compliance. And it's great to have that, right? But there's so much more to it. Like all of a sudden I inherited a team of, I don't know, like 100,
Right.
200 people in HR. And I had, like, as a lawyer, no one trains you how to manage people or how to let alone be a leader, right? And so I walked into all of a sudden having this group of people knowing nothing other than like how to litigate, right? And so I had to learn the hard way and through mistakes about how to be a leader.
And it's really funny because I don't know how many jobs you had before you and I met, because we met in MySpace, an
Right.
awesome adventure. And those who have been watching and listening to podcasts, I've had a number of the alums from the MySpace group. But when I met you there, I don't know if I've ever said this to you. First of all, you weren't just the head of HR. You might have been COO. I don't remember what your title was there. You were overseeing.
It was COO when we met, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, you were overseeing it. We had Tammy or somebody else was head of HR. And so context everybody, MySpace having problems. We needed to retain great talent. So Aria was first brought in for that, right? We were retaining the really amazing leaders because there was an incredible talent pool at that organization, trying to save it at that point. And let me come to you, Dustin, because it was so interesting to me. You were unlike any head of HR that I had ever, like CHRO, if you will. And you were technically in that role, even though that wasn't the role, right? You were in a broader role. Because let me just tell you, I remember thinking instinctually, your instincts were very different than a lot of other C-level heads of HR. And so at first I was like, oh, like, is that because you were a lawyer? Like, I kept trying to figure out, because oftentimes in a situation like that, right, it was tumultuous. It was crazy. We had CEO changes, I felt like, every week, but that's not true, everybody. It just felt like that. And
it was great. It was at all my jobs. That was the craziest. Definitely.
Yeah, I don't know what the word is, because there were curveballs on a regular basis. But my point, everybody, is that you, Dustin, which is probably why we became not only friends, but we worked together a lot. Mm-hmm. Rarely did you give me the conservative, easy answer.
Right. It's funny. I was going to ask you what instinct you're talking about. And I don't know if I'm too cavalier with the law, but I could see if you came up through traditional HR channels and you're like, they scare people to death about the employment laws, particularly in California. Right. And the irony is they're not scary. I mean, you just have to know them, and they can be very complex. But when you do know them, I felt very comfortable with, because the easy thing to do is go, no, we can't do that, right? Like that's the really easy thing to do, because there's some law. And of course you have to follow and comply with the laws, but you also have to understand the intent, and understanding all of those things. I felt very comfortable saying, well, we don't have to do it this way. We can do it this way. That's not what this was about. This was about something else. So I was able to maybe more nuance that. And I was never afraid of that, like of shying away from that piece of it.
Well, look, I don't know if you're going to remember this. I'm sure I've shared this with you, but if not, because I was in preparation for this, I was thinking, what is my Dustin experience? And there was a moment, and it has stuck with me for a long time because we did it. And I think that for the people who kind of went with us on this, so we have a lot of people who will listen to this and watch this for a long time, I hope. But they won't be in HR, right? They'll be a leader or a manager who are going to be in a relationship with HR, but they'll be running a function, a team, a business. And what Aria was doing at MySpace, was running cohorts of leaders, in what felt like a very chaotic, sometimes a battleground, right? Like people were throwing each other under the bus. There was a lot of problems, very real problems. And so many of the leaders, specifically the technical leaders, I felt like oftentimes their instincts around people weren't always great. And I remember at some touch point, you know, because I would, you know, at least talk to you every few weeks or every month or something, right? Like, how's it going and whatever. And I remember saying to you, the biggest problem we have is around their instincts, right? So they were highly dependent on HR, oftentimes in a reactionary way, right? To fix problems, right, what you and your teams were dealing with. And you said to me, time out, Chris. I want these people to trust themselves. And I remember going, wait, what do you want to do? Because some of them were doing dumb things. Like, some of their instincts were so far away. And for everybody listening and watching, I'm not exaggerating. There was stuff going on where I was like, what? Because people were in their primal instincts, right? They were fear-based. They were worried about, I'm going to save my job. I'm not worried about the rest of these people. So that's a rough place to cultivate leadership when you know everybody's shooting each other in the foxhole. Like, that's a tough place. And so I remember looking at you and going, wait, what? Like, I want them to trust themselves. And I was like, not what I thought you were going to say.
Yeah, I remember that. I do remember
something
that.
different.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I honestly, I don't remember. Like I do remember saying that because I felt like to be in a place that you want to work, you have to trust people. And I've always felt this way. And I've had this debate with lots of people, different people at different jobs, including Rovi, including other places too, TV Guide, other ones. I don't believe in making rules for the 1% that do bad things, right? So, and oftentimes you can get caught in that because bad things, the 1% can do some really bad things, right? And so companies can get caught up in making it too bureaucratic and protecting against that from happening versus empowering the 99%. And I don't know if that's an optimist view or not, but I just always thought that way. Or it's like, you know, I always think like when I had my son, I felt like I became a much better leader because I then understood much better how to help teach people, right? Because without knowing that, like I was always just do it this way, like, you know, like it's easy. And then until you have like someone that you're in charge of and you realize that they don't get it that way, you realize you have to be a better leader or manager to do that. And I think the number one thing is trusting people's, even if you know they're going to make mistakes. Now you can have backup plans if that happens, right? Right. But empowering people makes a huge difference. And I know that's like it almost feels like cliched to say that. Anyway, so yeah, anyway, I was just saying, I think the empowering is, you know, overused a lot because people say, oh, you need to empower your people. It is really more of a philosophy and how you deal with people day to day than just like, you know, do this or do that. But I've always been a huge proponent of that. And not every place I've worked at, there's been a lot of disagreement amongst senior executives about that.
No, look, that was the other note I had, is that because we started together in MySpace, and then I met you in Rovi, I reworked with you in Rovi and then Covetris, right? So we have a few experiences together. Part of my observation is, first of all, you've been consistent, and that, well, first of all, that's not only interesting, it's pretty amazing because, you know, those situations were unique. They had some commonalities, but they were unique. And I would say I don't know if it's just an instinct, right? It might actually be philosophy. I want to trust people. I don't want to have to make too many rules. Like, why are we treating people like we have to make a policy for every little thing?
Right.
You know, all of that is not the same as a lot of people who are doing that job in other places. Let me just say that. That's not the norm.
I know that. Right.
And I think it's important, you know, maybe as we talk about some of your other experiences, that we remember a lot of people who will watch this and listen to it are in organizations that I believe are just too rigid and constantly telling the leaders and managers, we don't trust you, so do exactly what we say, which I think what I'm seeing, and I see it in a lot of tech businesses, right, is you have highly analytical, really smart engineers, et cetera, who then come into management and leadership, and the real underlying message is, we don't trust you, don't trust your instincts, which for people who are introverted and don't love conflict, et cetera,
right,
then like, it's like a weird catch-22, because management and leadership, you have to have uncomfortable conversations. Like sometimes you have to trust your gut, right? You can't wait for HR to tell you exactly what to do.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's not what one way is right or wrong, right? It's, you know, the reason why people do that is because they can scale it, right? Like, so you can have massive organizations and have some standardization of quality and feel comfortable with it, right? That's just not, I don't want to work in an organization like that, right? Like that's just replicable. And you say, okay, this is how we do it, and everyone does it the same way. Now that's not wrong. And there's been plenty of successful examples of that, right? But it does take away the ability to be, I think, to be more creative and nimble than or to have a certain type of employee that you otherwise might want.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and maybe another day, I don't think we have time, but back to your reference to the George Land growth curve, right? I think a lot of organizations are actually experiencing the negative downstream effects of too much process and too much rigidity, which is when it's time to pivot, change, transform, innovate, put the word in the blank, and I don't really care, but everybody seems to be having some version of that right now, and having to do it fast, to your point in that model. And I'll attach that so people know what we're talking about. It's called George Land, The Growth Curve, and it's from the book Grow or Die. But to your point, like if organizations for years and years and years have done well and scaled with more conformity and standardization, et cetera, they get to the pivot point, it won't.
No, that's right.
Tell people all of a sudden, oh, by the way, don't do that anymore. We need you to all of a sudden think for yourself.
Yeah, not to be going to too esoteric things, but as technology advances, you're going to see those skills that are replicable be taken over by AI and other things. And so that's no longer going to be necessary. And what's really going to be valuable is the independent thought, right? And creativity, I think anyway. And you're starting to see all that stuff happen now. But anything that even that is not easily replicable is starting to be replicable, right? Just through AI. And that's interesting to see how that'll affect these organizations that are much more rigid in their approaches.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I don't want to get off topic, but everybody yesterday.
I know that'll get us way off topic, but it is
like generative AI, all of these things. I'm
right.
Like it's here. Okay, so let's come back to some more of your lessons, because I want to make sure we spend some time at the end of this talking about the dream.
Yep. Okay. All right. So anyway, basically in my 30s and like early 40s, it was about HR and just learning the lessons that I needed to learn. So how to manage, how to lead. And I, when I was in HR, I looked at it as a business function. I really did. And kind of deflected away like the fact that I was in HR more so that I'm here to help solve people issues. Although I think all executives should the ironic thing is the higher you go up, the more all the executive jobs are kind of the same, right? Like every senior level president, their job is to motivate and manage a large group of people. They're not doing the work themselves. Their job is to leverage it, right? That's exactly what an HR executive does. That's exactly what the head of IT does. That's exactly what, you name it. And we're all kind of do the same thing. So I saw the HR position as being a supplement to the other executives to help do that in their groups as well. And it really helped because I had to learn the lessons of leadership and how to manage groups, and then learn how to teach others to do the same, right? Because I felt like I'm more of an evangelist for that, sitting at the executive table than just doing it myself. So that was the phase where I was primarily, so I went into what was then a roll-up company of post-production companies in LA and England, called Ascent Media, that we basically bought all these different post-production companies and integrated them, and was a public company. They went private. Anyway, went back and forth, and it was all about integration and how to do that. So I learned a lot of great lessons on that with HR. And that's where I learned the most valuable lesson, because I failed a lot in that job, just because I had gone from, that was where I went from lawyer to HR.
Oh, right.
Then I went to TV Guide, which was great experience for me, because it was a very limited, not role, but mission, in that we really had to turn a company around that had a big scandal in the past regarding SEC stuff, and the founder, and sell the company, which we did. So that was a 2 to 3 year thing, and there were great people there. And I really, what I did there was replicate the lessons I learned at Ascent Media into TV Guide, and realize that it worked, right? Like, oh my God, this is great. I know how to do this. And then from there, that's when I went into Fox Interactive Media, which was then kind of had MySpace into the MySpace genre, or not genre, the MySpace company, and was initially HR in those online companies, and then moved into operations, which was the latter part of my career, which was a whole different ball of wax, because it while it was managing people, to my point about it becoming, some of the jobs becoming the same, it was learning business, which was great, because I had learned it from both as a lawyer and as an HR person, but really as running businesses was much different. And what I liked about that more was the creativity involved in that. So for me, that was another shift away from HR and then managing larger groups, including businesses. And that was just different learnings about how businesses work. And actually, I learned a lot in my last job, working with Ben at Covetrus, because it was a business it was new to me. It was veterinarian space, although it was software. And so I had to learn a lot of different things. I was never in a distribution business before, so that was learning that business. Yeah. And what I really learned on that was you have to really look at externally how other people do things, and listen externally, not be so internally focused. And Ben was a great teacher at that, at how to do that.
Yeah. And look, I think it's important to note, one of my other Dustin learnings in my notes is, first of all, you never took any easy jobs.
No, I didn't. I never got the
you could have
Netflix kicking off, and all you have to do is just build, expand. No, I never had that.
No, look, it's funny because I have the privilege, right? Honestly, of having a view, because we have so many clients, and it's just funny to me because, again, as I'm thinking, I'm like, well, Dustin never took an easy job. And I don't think he would have liked an easy job. And I know what I don't know that any, by the way, C-level job is easy.
Right.
But what I mean is, like, you went to the fire.
Yeah, there was no maintenance jobs, right? Like, no, just keep the wheels on the bus, and it was good before.
No simple growth. Like, I have clients where I've got a client now. I mean, it's an amazing company, and they have challenges, but their challenges are all related to growth, right? They're not cleaning up,
right,
turning around, right, dealing with, almost every time I joined you, which is why we were a good combo, is, we were cleaning up things while we were growing things, while we were trying to maybe fill a deficit of, well, I wouldn't have been there if there wasn't some leadership development thing. Mm-hmm. So you don't take easy jobs, Dustin.
No, but look, the advantage of having been through those battles together is how to prioritize, and what to fix pretty quickly, right? Like, just having now done it so many times, like I can walk in immediately, these are the three things I'm going to work on right away because I could tell, like right off the, like, you know, you don't need that. I used to be like, okay, I'm going to come in a job. I'll spend 90 days learning the company and the business and the people. Now I'm like, I don't need that kind of time. Like I can do it pretty quickly, but it's because of the patterns that have all happened. And the irony of ironies is, whether you're in high tech, whether you're in social media, like we were in MySpace, whether you're in pure entertainment, like TV Guide, or sound studios, or veterinarian software, there's actually the same issues, right? There's, even though it's different markets. And so that's one of the fallacies I always hear is like, well, you're not from this industry. Like everything is like, it used to, I guess 10 years ago, everyone said, oh, we're digitizing everything, right? We're going online, which is like, it's laughable now, right? Like of course you are, like, and the digital transformation companies undergoing. I know, I've heard it all. Like it's like those
100%. No, we're OG in that, you know, like gangsters, right? Because people say it now, and just like you, I'm like, yeah, I mean, we were in with the original online social,
right.
Didn't know what to imagine would be happening in 2023.
Right.
The models weren't monetized, right? Like people weren't selling anything, not materially with a predictable model selling anything. You guys were trying to figure that out.
Here's a story that I tell them, people just can't believe it. And anyone who was with us at MySpace knows this, is at the time we had the publisher rights to play free music online for all the major publishers and a lot of the independents. So you could go to your page on MySpace, curate your playlist, and play whatever you want for free, right? And the only thing we had was ads, right? Which was, anyway. And you remember all the strategy sessions we had at Soho House and all these other places. And what the big debate we were having was, should we make this subscription or should we do advertising? That was like one of the key questions. And I still remember, because people were like, and subscriptions never work. I'm not sure that's going to work. Like And it's so funny looking back on it now, because this was pre-Spotify, like before Spotify.
I know. I just laugh right now
there was so many things like that we were talking about. I remember the first time we were talking about curation, and people were like, what the hell's curation? Like, it was like we just made it up, right? And now like everyone uses it. It was really funny. I give credit to, I think Jason Hirschhorn was the first one to say that. And I'm like, you mean like the museum thing? And he's like, yeah, it's kind of the same thing. But there was so many things like that. Like, just remember
the meeting when curation became a word at MySpace. I remember it fondly, because again, everybody, I was facilitating meetings. Oftentimes I was trying to like hold it together, get the leaders to cascade new ideas, and the executives were trying to solve problems very, very quickly. My team was then trying to take it down through leadership and say, okay, what does that mean? Because sometimes it was a big pivot, right? Sometimes, like you're saying, concepts were new, and anybody listening and watching this, I'm sure you're living through some version of that, where the executives go on a retreat and they come back, and down from the mountain comes the new strategy.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is just kind of interesting now, right, to have lived through all the iterations and see what's actually working.
Yeah, no, it is. It's actually very interesting to see what's played out, right, and how it's changed too. So like it was no surprise to me when Elon Musk was talking about Twitter, and then kind of poo-pooing the issues they were having with the security, right? And that, if people remember, that was a big issue we had at MySpace. It was a huge issue. We were being sued by the state attorney generals for all kinds of different things, and it was all related to that. And to see it replay itself, but this time, like not actually having the obvious experience that I think the old executives probably had at Twitter, and seeing it play out again was interesting to see, because we had all those issues 15 years ago, right? It was the same exact stuff.
Yeah, it's completely. Look, I know people know I'm old when I either introduce them to or talk about some of the execs from Napster that
yeah. No, that's right.
They're like, Napster. makes me feel like I'm 100, but I'm not. And that wasn't that long ago.
I thought you said, I'm sorry, I thought you said Friendster, Napster. Yes, you're right.
Napster.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, look, I don't want to let this go without, first of all, if you want to give them any more golden nuggets that you want to pass on from your leadership positions, but I want to spend a little bit of time because what you have done is more amazing than you realize, because many, many people are sitting in their Zooms and their offices wishing, thinking, fantasizing about taking their family, quitting their job, taking their family, going to somewhere in the world. And that's super scary to them. And it was scary to you.
So let me give the listeners context. So in 2018, after I left a job where it was going through some leadership changes, and then also in the process of a sale, I decided, like, at the time, of like, I need to take some time off because I actually have really wanted to take my family and travel around the world, and all of a sudden had a little bit of the means to be able to do it, and decided to take a year off, and just my son was in 4th grade, so he didn't start 4th grade. We just said, you know what, we're gonna do it on the road, and go from. We didn't pick one country. We actually just said we're going to travel around the world. And when you're talking about a year length, it was you can't really plan that, right? You can't say, okay, where we're going to go each month. So literally, we just bought a one-way ticket to Oslo and hopped on a plane and took off. We did that for a year. We went to, I think, 36 different countries. It was an amazing experience. I highly recommend it. I wrote an article about it on my LinkedIn page too. Just an article meant to address, like, yes, it is doable. You can do it. You don't have to have a lot of money. And it was for us a life fulfilling experience. And one of the things you had asked me prior or recently was, are there things that people told you that you shouldn't do, that you found either that, weren't true or were true? And honestly, when we talked to people about doing it, there are other people that have done it too. Lots of people have done it that I talked to, and just to get perspective on it. But I wasn't really there weren't that many things I was worried about in doing it. And probably, I don't know if I was being too cavalier about it, until literally 2 days before, someone told me, you're very brave for doing this. And I thought to myself, brave? Like, why am I brave? I hadn't even thought about that. And then I started to get scared, like, oh shit, like what happens? Like, what does that mean? Like, what can possibly happen that's bad? So I started thinking about it. And then anyway, so we just did it. Like, we just went, and I think worst case scenario, we just come back, right? But there were people since then have asked me well, I wish I could do that, but, and there's always a but, right? But I have kids, but I'll be out of work for a year and I won't be able to get hired again. But you name it, there's a list of things. I will say this, if you really want to do something, all that stuff, you can mitigate against that. Yeah. But some of the things were really kind of false. One was that, well, you're going to be out of work for a year, so either you're going to lose skills or you're going to be off the map. Not true. Like, the moment I got back, as a matter of fact, while I was on the last 3 months I was on the trip, I was getting emails, people saying, hey, will you come do this or to come do that? I was like, no, I was like, no, I really want to take this time and not cut it short. And so I didn't find that to be true at all, nor from anyone else that I talked to that have done this. If anything, it makes you more interesting, right? Like, when you go in an interview, what were you doing last year?
I'm like,
right?
I think I remember right before, when you had your scared period, it was more than 2 days, by the way. I'm calling you out on that. But I remember the moments we were talking about this thing, right? And everybody has it. So everybody who's watching and listening, what Dustin's saying right now, I experience with everyone who dreams, fantasizes, wants to do this, whether it's just to travel or to actually relocate. The number one thing is that, will I ever be able to get a job again?
Yes.
Or is this going to make me irrelevant? And in every situation, it's exactly what Dustin's saying. It makes you more interesting.
Yeah.
People
yeah. And
want to talk to you.
Yeah, and then think of all the benefits that, like, my son, would have been in fourth grade, which I found out, and this is going to sound really horrible, but I'm just going to say it anyway. Kids don't really learn that much in fourth grade anyway. I'm not kidding you.
Fourth grade teachers.
I know, sorry. No, they actually, so what we did is we focused on English and math. And so I helped my son with Khan Academy, which I can't say enough good things about Khan Academy. I love that site. I love what he does. And I think it's awesome. When my son came back, he was ahead in math. Like, it was awesome. Like that is such a great platform, and what he's done with that is just amazing. Anyway, so we use Khan Academy, and then we use, other things to teach him English. And then everything else was just like, okay, you're going to go see the pyramids. So you should know about the pyramids. We'll talk about it as you see it, kind of thing. So that's what we focused on. He didn't miss a beat when he went back to fifth grade. Like, it was great. Like, so that shouldn't be a concern, really. And now there's so many online schools. So to fast forward a little bit, after this last job, about 7 months ago, we decided to we went down to South America to travel more, and then moved to Paris, where I am now, and live here, with the objective of learning French. So I've been in French school for the last, 4 months, with a bunch of 18 to 20 year olds.
Yeah, you're Emily in Paris. You're whatever that cool show is.
No, no. They hate that here, by the way. Anyway, so the objective is to learn French, but it's before. So my son started school here in January, but before then he was on an online school. So for 8th grade, which was really good. It was a really good school. So there are lots of options for schooling for kids and stuff that you can do to do this. And they're really, really good ones. So it's actually way better than it was even in 2018. Now, all the options.
Well, and here's my version of your story. I don't know if it's real or not, but I feel like, first of all, the quality time that you and Nason are spending with Dylan, like, you can't duplicate that having what we all believe is a normal life. You can't.
Yeah. That's true. Look, it's been great. I love it. But I tell people this, it's not easy, right? Like, I had to pull. He was in school prior to that, and so he had friends, and that was difficult. He's still actually kind of a blessing in disguise is video games, because he still plays online with his friends back home, which is kind of ironic, because most parents are like, stop playing video games, but it's a nice way for him to connect with his friends back home. So there have been challenges, but I hope in the end that he's better for it. Like, he's now in an immersive French class. He speaks it probably better than Nason or I have, because he's picking it up much quicker than we are. So again, we're thinking worst case scenario, maybe he comes out of this speaking French, fluently, like a French person. The side effect that he may grow up to hate us for doing this to him, but I'm hoping that he doesn't. And it's been a great experience for us. It's been a lot of like I try to, with and everyone says this, but we try to teach Dylan, like, nothing in life that is worthwhile is easy. Nothing. Everything worthwhile is hard. Everything. And that's been my experience. And so, yes, it's hard. You had to leave your friends, but you're going to be so much, like, in the end, so much more enriched. Like, you'll speak another language. You'll be able to do all these other things. And yes, it's not easy now, but it's just a better payoff. And it goes to the theme you said, like, I didn't take easy jobs. That was part of it, was I didn't feel like I could learn enough in a job that was just maintaining things.
Yeah. Look, I think the interesting thing, and you can tell Dylan I said that, he can be mad at me too. The world of status quo maintaining, I think sooner or later that's going to be gone. Like, I don't know another way to describe that. I just feel like, and you just said it, but I'm going to put it in my words, right? I feel like, people's values have shifted and are going to continue to evolve, because everyone's questioning. The most obvious things are, do we really need people to return to work? I actually believe there are some jobs that do need to be done, at a specific location with specific people. but a lot of jobs don't. And you and I both know that our kids are going to be in a world where geographic location may not actually be that important to how they contribute and add value. And I mean, you are preparing him for that.
Here's an interesting thing. Like, so when we were preparing to leave to come over here, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, you know, how's it going to work? And I'm like, we didn't know anyone in Paris. Right. So it was like, I don't know, we'll try to make it happen. Yeah. And so there was a lot of just wondering how that might happen. But to your point about just people now, once we got here, we met a lot of people that had done the same exact thing. So like, I'll give you an example. Like, even in my French language class, like jokingly say is like full of like 20-year-olds, half of them all have jobs in the US, in Korea, and all over the world, and they just moved here to work here. And so it's already happening. Like you just may know of a few instances, but there's a lot of people here that are doing the exact same thing. So it's actually it's way more common than people think it is.
Well, it's a part of, again, these are big concepts that we're having here, and I probably need to wind us down, but let me just say, first of all, I am not kidding when I say you're living the dream. So I know it hasn't been all rainbows and unicorns, but I do want to say you shouldn't take it for granted. In fact, there might be a book here for you, Dustin, or I don't know. Go on the speaking tour, the digital speaking tour, helping people figure this out. Because we went from, if you remember, back to when Tim Ferriss published 4-Hour Workweek. That was a long time ago. And he was documenting and interviewing people who were doing what you guys did.
Right.
I don't know what year that came out. I'll figure it out and put a link in the thing if people haven't heard of that book. And Tim Ferriss, he's been around now a long time. He's got a very famous
blog. He also has a diet. He has a diet book too that's pretty good.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And the Tools of Titans. I think I have it up behind me.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
I mean, just really, really great. And so I guess the moral of the story is I'm thrilled to be able to give you a platform to share this. I think that non-traditional thinking is important. So as you know, as I was preparing for this, my appreciation for it, Dustin, like I had it the whole time, but it kind of catalyzed for me. And, you know, I'm like, oh God, I really got to bring this message out, because you are role modeling for people. You've always been a role model, but at this moment, I think you're role modeling a lifetime of lessons, and now in your life, maybe more than you realize. So I don't mean to embarrass you, but I think
thank you. I
think it's real. That. No, I think it's real.
Yeah, look, if any of your viewers want any advice or anything like that, they should feel free to reach out to me. You can put my contact information in the blog notes. Yeah. I'd be happy to help. There's a lot of people that reach out to me all the time, like asking me, like, how did you do this, do that? And there was a lot of people who I reached out to who'd done it before me that were very helpful too. So just one practical tip: you don't need health insurance. The only place you need health insurance is in the US. That's it.
Yeah, that's crazy, right? Oh, there's so many things. See, you should make sure that you got like a little checklist. You and Nason.
I know. There's a lot of practical tips I could give people.
I think you should just set up shop. That's podcast number 2, Dustin Incorporated.
Well, actually, thanks. Well, Chris, really, you mentioned that. Thanks for having me on your podcast. I've watched your other episodes. I hope this was informative for your viewers, and I actually had a really good time of sharing stories and lessons learned. But it's obviously been awesome to work with you in the past too, and the future is bright.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, I'm sorry that we have to end this. So everybody, pass this on to anyone who could, get value from, like I said, all the superhumans, including Dustin Finer, that I interview, because everybody is going to get some nugget of gold. And we are in a new world. We're creating it right now. So
yeah.
That's great.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, have a great day. And Dustin, thank you.